State is at the core concepts of political thought. There exists different perspectives on state like liberal individualist perspective, class perspective, feminist perspective, Gandhian perspective, welfare state perspective, and organic theory of a state. Today, here I am Bharti Sharma, Assistant Professor of Political Science at the Department of Humanities, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences, is going to tell you about organic theory of a state. First question which pops up in our mind is, what is a state? We often confuse it with government, society, or country, but state altogether is a different concept. According to liberals, state has 4 elements. It is one association which has population, sovereignty, government or administration, and defined territory. Today we are going to study, or we are going to understand, what is organic theory of a state. Organic theory of a state represents the earliest thinking about state. It equates a state with organism. It is also called as organismic theory. When you equate a state with any organism, this has 2 implications. You can infer 2 meanings from this. The first inference is, like parts of organism are dependent for their existence and worth on the existence of organism, the parts of a state are also dependent for their existence and worth on the existence of a state. There is no existence of parts without the organism. The second inference is, different organs are fit to perform different function, and their functions determines their importance, their status or position. Likewise, there are different parts in state. They perform different functions, and the functions which they perform determines their status, whether it is of superior or inferior status in the state. Now, the theorists of organic theory, they view state as a natural institution. First in the line is Aristotle. He says state comes into existence for the sake of life and continues for the sake of good life. State comes into existence for sake of life means that state has primary function to provide security to the people. Then he says, man by nature is a political animal. Further, he says that one who is living outside a state is either a beast or God, because any ordinary civilized man needs state for its security and development. For God is self-sufficient and doesn't need institution of state or any political institution. Then he says state is prior to man. When he says state is prior to man means that more importance is given to state. Interest of states are of superior nature than interest of man. Next thinker is Edmund Burke. He is chief exponent of conservatism. He argues that state was the product of process of historical growth, and this historical growth is often linked to growth of any organism. Also, it was also greater and more complex than any of the parts which made it up. It means that like any organism grows, state also grows, and the functions performed by organs are of lesser importance than the functions performed by any state. G.W.F. Hegel, who is among the popular idealist theorists, also views state as embodiment of nation an object of worship. He says state is march of God on earth, which means state is absolute, its authority should not be questioned. Then another view of organic theorist is the state is an ethical institution. Again, there is the same quotation given by Aristotle that state comes into existence for the sake of life and continues for the sake of good life. So first part we have already understood. We have understood the first part of this quotation. Here, to understand state as ethical institution, you need to understand the second part of the quotation where it is saying it continues for the sake of good life. So good life according to Aristotle is one where citizens are developing. So it is role and duty of a state to help citizens in their development. It is existing to help citizens to develop. Its primary function is to provide them with security, but the next function is to help them in their development. When citizens obey laws of a state, live by rights and duty, these things enable citizens to achieve moral excellence, and it is a state which enables citizens to achieve this moral excellence. Hence, state is also ethical institution. Another thing which is said by Aristotle is, from the hour of birth, some men are marked out for subjection and others for rule. This means that by birth, some are destined to be masters and some are destined to be slaves. Here, Aristotle is justifying inequality. Aristotle, who is known as father of political science, is justifying inequality. So he is saying, like different parts of body or different parts of organism, they have different functions to perform. Each organ is different and hence it is unequal. Likewise, the parts of a state, or we can take the case of citizens, different citizens have different functions to perform, and hence inequality is justified, and state is doing no wrong if it is treating unequal to the citizens. Next in this regard is the view of biological theorists. They say there are three essential characteristics of any organism which are also present or applicable to the case of a state. The first characteristic is that there exists an intrinsic relationship between the parts and the whole. The parts are dependent for their existence on the existence of the state. They have no existence without the existence of a state. The second characteristic is an organism shows organic unity of its parts and it tends to grow from within. The third characteristic is an organism is not means but an end in itself. Among biological theorists, we have Bluntschli, who have often gone to the extent that he calls state as masculine sex and church as the feminine. Biological theorists have sometimes drawn strange parallels between state and natural man, state and organism. They even went to the extent of calling tissues of a state, legs of a state, hands of a state. Bluntschli has called state as masculine sex and church as feminine. They also claim that individuals could have any rights within the state, but they could never have any right against the state. Organic theorists, they are often criticized for subordinating men to state, for denial of equality, and for presenting distorted view of freedom. Thank you everyone. This is all about organic theory. See you in the next video with another module.